And I'd like to take the opportunity to wish each one a very blessed New Year. As I sat there, I realized that much of what I'm going to say, or at least the message, much was said in already on the back of the program. They have the text that I would like to consider, and that is Psalm 90, Brother Dr. Wayne. He went over many of the Psalms, but he skipped that one. So we're going to take a look at Psalm 90. And verse 12, just like you have on the program, verse 12, because verse 12 is the key verse in Psalm 90. Psalm 90 was written by Moses, and it's the only psalm that was written by Moses. And verse 12, we're going to consider from 1 to 12, but verse 12 is where we find our text today. It says, "So teach us to number our days so that we may apply our hearts unto wisdom." This psalm has two very, very important things in these 12 verses here. Two very important things. And the first part of it has to do with the eternity of God. The eternity of God. It says in verse 1, as we have read before, "Thou hast been our dwelling place in all generations, before the mountains were brought forth, or ever the earth. Thou hast formed the earth and the world, even from everlasting to everlasting, thou art God." So it's the eternity of God. God is forever. God is everlasting. God is before the mountains. God is before all dwelling places. He's before the seas and the rivers and everything. God is forever. This text tells us that we should number our days. But when we look at the eternity of God, we look at him as the one who is the creator. He created everything. The scripture says there was not anything made that was not made by God. He formed the earth. Above all, he made us. He made man. And before the morning stars sang together, God was. He always will. He always will be. Genesis chapter 1 and verse 1 reminds us that in the beginning God. God always was. He always will be. But Moses, and we could go on for the rest of the day looking at the eternity of God. But then Moses focuses on the frailty of man. The frailty of man. And that is what you have on your program today from verse 12. So teach us. Now, most of the times you hear anything about Psalm 90, it's when we get to funerals that we hear this psalm is read. But as you look at the verse, you will notice that Moses is not considering people that are dead, because you notice what it says here in this verse. It says here, teach us, living people, our days, he said, number our days, living people, that we may apply our hearts unto wisdom. So, the first thing that we notice here about the frailty of man is that we should number our days. The reason we should number our days is because our days are very few. In this congregation here today, and we look at the days that has to be numbered, and you look at it from a physical point of view, we have people here today of various ages. And by man's reckoning, man's order, there are young people here, there are middle-aged people here, and there are old people. Older people have less days to number. But notice what it says here. We as to number our days because they are few. We do not know when we have to leave this world. And then it tells us in verse 3, you return to dust. All mankind lives under a decree of death from God. All mankind. And we cannot escape it. But while we look at the frailty of man, and we cannot escape this decree of death which is laid upon us, in verse 3, God gives an invitation. It's given in verse 3, the latter part of verse 3. And that invitation is, in spite of the frailty of man, God is saying to man, thou turnest, return, O children of men. In light of man's frailty, God is giving man an invitation to come to him, to recognize that he is a frail mortal being, to realize that life on earth is a very temporary thing for us. And what God is doing, he is making man aware of the fact that sooner or later we have to leave this earth, and he's giving man an invitation to come to God, to recognize God, to accept Christ as a Savior, to make a decision for Christ. And this is the reason. The statistics shows that between this year, the end of this year, what we call between Old Year and New Year's, more people die in that short space of time than the first 6 months of the New Year. I don't know if you noticed what happened in the papers last week. We read over and over, and we saw on television, and we read in newspapers of this dear man that was struck by the police in Bensonhurst. And during the past week, his daughter, 27 years old, took sick. and she was in the ICU Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And she passed away yesterday at 27 years old. Life at best is very brief. And life is like a falling of a leaf. And it's like the binding of a sheaf. And the hymn writer said that we should be in time. Now, there's a third reason why we have to number our days. And that is our days are limited by God. We do not know how long we are going to live on this earth. But our days are known to God. And our days are limited by God. So that time is not on our side. Time is not on our side. Because 1,000 years with God is as but of yesterday. 1,000 years with God is about one day. 1,000 years is but one day with God. For instance, when God said in Genesis 3 that Adam, the day that Adam sinned, that he should surely die, God was not speaking in terms of our time, because Adam lived to be 930 years, but Adam died within God's day. God's day, not our day. That 930 years that Adam lived was in God's day. When God said, the day thou shalt eat it thereof, thou shalt surely die, Adam died within God's day, which was 1,000 years in God's day. Notice what happened here. And then he says that our life here on earth is like a watch in the night. But how long is a watch in the night? A watch in the night is only 3 hours. That's how brief our life is. A watch in the night is only 3 hours. The Apostle Paul, writing to the Romans in chapter 13, verse 2, he said that our night is fast spent and the day is at hand. And we do not know when that end is going to come. The fourth reason that we should number our days, because as God looks down from heaven, what does he see on the children of men? He sees that our life is a dying life. That's why we should number our days, because God sees our life as a dying life. It tells us here, you sweep them away with a flood, and they are like a dream. Think of a dream. Many times you dream a dream, by the time you wake up in the morning, you forget it. He said that our life is like the grass. It grows up in the morning. In the evening, it is withered. So the hymn writer says, life at best is very brief. It's like the falling of a leaf. Then, the fifth reason why we should number our days, it is because it says here, for we, in verse 7, are brought to an end, that means an end of life, by thy anger. Why God's anger? Because the bodies of the human race wears out as a result of God's anger in the universe. The Bible reminds us that Adam's sin not only brought sin into the world, but by death, by sin, and death is passed upon all men. An example of this verse 7 is seen in the life of Moses, where God's judgment comes out upon man because of sin. Now Moses' life was being terminated by God because of God's anger. And even although Moses lived to be 120 years, he lived to be 120 years, but Moses' life was cut off because of the anger of God. So, we will soon be passing from 2017 to 2018. But as each year passes by, and if we live to be 120 years like Moses, we spend our years as a tale that is told. Now you know, a tale is a very, very short story. Very, very short story. So those of us who are here today are not saved. When you begin to number your days, nobody knows how many days they are going to live. Last year in 2017, January of this year in 2017, the first 4 days in 2017, there were 37 murders in the city. Nobody knows how long they are going to live. Nobody knows how long they're going to be on this earth. So as we number our days, let's remember, it is later than we think. It's later than we think. Last year, 2.5 years ago, two and a half years ago, I went to the hospital. And the doctor gave me some possibilities and concerning my operation with my heart. But one of the things that they told me during the operation that I might die. They told me that. And the doctor said to me, well, how do you respond to that? I said, this is the way I respond to it. Whether living or dying, I belong to the Lord. Whether living or dying, I belong to the Lord. So they say, you're not fearful. I said, there's nothing to be fearful about. I said, Jesus forgave my sins. He saved me. And when I die, I will go with him. You see? So I will die. I said, I will die in peace. Right? To those who are not saved today, life at best is very brief. It's like the falling of a leaf. It's like the binding of a sheaf. And the hymn writer said we should be in time. But the latter part of the verse is, how do we apply our hearts unto wisdom? Well, first of all, the Bible tells us that the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. You see, all wisdom comes from God. It doesn't matter how many letters a person have beside their name. It doesn't matter how many universities a person went to, or how many colleges. That only pertains to human wisdom. All wisdom comes from God. So, in applying our hearts to wisdom, we have to seek the wisdom of God. Now, in the Greek, the word wisdom means worldly wisdom or spiritual wisdom. So therefore, the wisdom that we seek and the wisdom that we need is not the wisdom from man. It's not the wisdom that is taught us in schools. It's the wisdom from God. That's what we need. Not earthly wisdom. We need wisdom from God. And the Bible tells us in James 1:5 that if any man lack wisdom, let him ask of God, because that's where the wisdom comes from. Solomon, we are told, was the wisest man that ever lived. But how did he become the wisest man that ever lived? Because Solomon asked God for wisdom. And the Bible tells us here in James 1:5 that if we lack wisdom, let him ask of God that gives to all men liberally. So if we need this wisdom, considering the fact that our days are few, let us seek God's wisdom, not earthly wisdom. Now, first of all, we gain wisdom by getting a heart of wisdom from God. And here is how David puts it in Psalm 39, verses 4 and 5. He said, Lord, make me to know my end, what and the measure of my days, what it is, so that I may know how frail I am. How frail I am. So man is frail, the frailty of man. God is eternal. God is everlasting. So the few days that we have, because if somebody lives to be 120 years, and not very few of us are going to live as long as Moses, 120 years. I don't think any of us here are going to live to be 120 years. So the days that we have is very few. And the wisdom that we need to exercise, the wisdom that we need is to ask God for wisdom. You see, the first thing we notice here, as far as wisdom is concerned, it gives us much food for thought. The verses that we have gives us a lot of food for thought. It says here that these verses tell us about the brevity of life, the uncertainty of life. But our wisdom that we need comes from God, because our existence here upon earth is a very brief one, but while we have a very brief existence, there is a long, long, long eternity ahead of all of us. The Bible, to those who are here today and they are not saved, you do not know how many days you have to live on earth. None of us know that. The Bible tells us in Proverbs 27, verse 1, boast not thyself of tomorrow, for you do not know what a day will bring forth. None of us know what a day will bring forth. So the thing to do is to make preparation. We are on the verge of moving on to 2018. But as you journey through from 2017 to 2018, the wisest thing to do, don't take the journey alone. Take Christ with you. Take Christ in your life. You see, you remember when the disciples, when Jesus said to the disciples, let us cross over on the other side? Well, the wisdom on the part of the disciples was they took Jesus with them for the journey. And when the boisterous winds in the Sea of Galilee began to rise up, they were all afraid. But listen, Jesus did not say that they were going over the other side. He said they were going to cross over. He didn't say they were going under the water on the other side. You see? So when if you as you journey from 2:17 to 2:18, take Christ with you. Make sure that Christ is in your life, just as the disciples made sure that Jesus was in the ship, within the boat. You need to take Christ in your life, because we do not know when these few days that we have is going to end. Nobody knows that. Only God knows that. So we should live. For Christians, for believers, we need to live with eternity's values in view. And more important is that every one of us as Christians should live every day as if it was the last day on earth, because we do not know when is the last day. And then for those who are not saved, the Bible reminds us that it is appointed unto man once to die, after death the judgment. And we do not know when that day is going to come. We do not know when that day is coming. But if you are not saved, we know that after death there comes the judgment. And the question is, where will you spend eternity? There is a heaven and there is a hell. There is a heaven to gain and there is a hell to shun. Jesus Christ gave his life. He provided salvation for all mankind, so that you need not die and go to a lost eternity, but you can be secure. You can have a place of security to know to go to, a place to dwell, a place to be eternally in the company of God's people in heaven. You can be in the presence of Christ for all eternity, because as we look at our days, we notice that there are few. Our days are uncertain, our days are brief. And the wisdom for us that we need, the wisdom for believers and unbelievers alike. Unbelievers should take Christ as a Savior, and believers, we need to live each day for the glory of God. Each day, anticipate things. We don't know the day, we don't know the hour we have to leave this earth. But let us live like Paul. And you know what Paul said? I have fought a good fight. I finished my course. I have kept the faith. And henceforth there is laid up for me a crown of righteousness, which the righteous judge shall give me at that day. And not to me only, but to all those who love his appearing. So let us live each day as if it was the last. As believers, let us live with eternity's values in view, for his name's sake. Amen.